Hey everybody, Dr. G here. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and personality disorder expert, and today I want to talk to you about the difference between typical neurodevelopment and the brain of a psychopath. So today I'm going to explain 4 major ways that the brains of psychopaths are different than typical neurodevelopment. Before we do that, I wanted to talk a minute about what psychopaths actually are. Now, I talk about being a personality disorder expert, and the personality disorder that goes along with psychopathy is antisocial personality disorder. Now, they also tend to have some narcissistic traits, but let's talk about specifically what antisocial personality disorder is for a quick minute so I can get into the differences between typical brains and the brains of psychopaths. Antisocial personality disorder at its core is the ability to exploit and violate others with no remorse. And we see this oftentimes in criminal behavior. The primary trait of someone with antisocial personality is that they exploit, and their primary deficiency is that they lack honor. And so what we see is that they are capable of exploiting people to endless degrees because they feel nothing about it. They really truly lack empathy and remorse to the extent that they don't feel anything about this. And we're going to talk about why that is neurologically. But one thing I wanted to clarify is I know antisocial personality makes it sound like these are people that don't like to be around other people or people that are not social. It really means they can't fit in society. It doesn't mean they're socially phobic. It means that they are antisocial. So just wanted to clarify that point before we jump into the brain differences. The first part of the brain that I want to talk about is the amygdala. Now, the amygdala is part of the limbic system. I know this sounds a little confusing, but by the time I'm done talking about it, I promise you will understand this. It's not that complicated. The limbic system is essentially the emotional center of the brain. And the amygdala connects fear and memory. So when we've been through something scary, our brain goes, hey, remember that. Avoid those things, right? So let's say you were walking on a trail and you saw a poisonous snake. Your amygdala is going to get activated. You're probably going to engage in fight or flight. And next time you walk on that trail, you're going to remember, oh God, there was a poisonous snake here. Or next time you're on a situation that reminds you of that, your amygdala is going to get engaged. People that are anxious tend to have overactive amygdalas. It tends to associate fear with too many things. So what we see with psychopaths is it's quite the opposite. It is understimulated. They do not connect fear and memory in the same way. They do not experience fear as intensely as other people do. And so this part of the brain structurally may be different. It may be underdeveloped in people with psychopathy. The prefrontal cortex. Now this is up here. It's the front part of the brain. It's the most advanced and developed part of the brain. It is associated with so many different issues. So people with ADHD, for example, like myself, have issues in their prefrontal cortex. But so do psychopaths. Psychopaths actually have reduced activity in the prefrontal cortex. And the prefrontal cortex does so many important things. It does what we call executive functioning. In other words, the more advanced things that we do, planning, organization, things like that. And so people that are chronically impulsive, because people with psychopathy tend to be very impulsive, have issues with the organization of the prefrontal cortex and the level of activity there. So we see the development of the prefrontal cortex is different. And that goes to show, and something I talk about in other videos, is that personality disorders are genetic. It's not just because somebody grew up in a certain situation or was abused or something like that. It is actually a genetic disorder. The brain is different. And it doesn't just form that way because of their experiences. Unfortunately, this is something that people are oftentimes born with. Now, it can be a combination of environment and genetics, but we think genetics plays a very, very heavy role in this, if not the vast majority of it. The corpus callosum. Now, the brain is connected. We have a left side and a right side of the brain, and it's connected in the middle. Sometimes people with seizures actually have the corpus callosum severed because it makes it so there's less activity going back and forth through the different hemispheres of the brain. And what we see for people with psychopathy is that the corpus callosum size is actually reduced. The anterior cingulate cortex. Now, the anterior cingulate cortex is associated with emotional regulation and empathy. And so, as you probably have predicted as I'm getting into this, there is reduced activity in the anterior cingulate cortex. And the lack of empathy, it can be really hard for people to truly understand the lack of empathy in psychopaths because we all feel empathy, even at times that we don't want to, or even if there's times that we have reduced empathy for people, or there's somebody we don't want to feel empathic towards. We inherently have the ability to feel empathy. We can't not feel it. And for psychopaths, it just is nothing. There is no empathy. Some people it's literally none. Some people it's minimal. But The intensity of the lack of empathy, the profoundness of the lack of empathy is very hard for people with a typical neurodevelopment to understand. So what we see in the brains of psychopaths is that there are underactive areas. That doesn't paint a complete picture. There's other contributing factors, but neurologically, these are areas that we can distinctly see are different. So if you enjoy this kind of content or you want to learn more, please follow, like, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.